Um, I was born in Barcelona, and I studied my music at the conservatoire there. And then in 1996, I moved to London to study violin at the Royal College of Music, and I started composition as a secondary study. And then when I finished, I decided that composition was really what I wanted to do. So I moved to King's College London to study with George Benjamin. First a master's, and then I did a whole PhD, which I finished about 3 years ago. And so I have a bit of a mixed background. I was a violin player, so in performance and in composition really. But nowadays, composition is my main thing. Imaginings for String Quartet is a commission from the Park Lane Group from London. It's a piece written for a young quartet called Jubilee Quartet, and I haven't never written anything for them. They are very young, very good players, but well, it's my first quartet. This piece is my first piece written for this sort of ensemble, and I haven't had too many months really to fulfill this commission. It was I was asked to write this piece in July, so it's been very few months to right now. We are in December, and I had to finish it by November. But it's been quite a stressful process in a way, because it's a very difficult kind of ensemble, a quartet to write for. I think it's a very it's very unbalanced. I think the ensemble of two violins, viola, and cello. I mean, it's an ensemble really that comes back from that really started with trio sonatas in the Baroque era, and then evolved. It evolved to into the classical period with Haydn and Mozart and Beethoven. But because they had because tonal music, of course, has a bass, and then they have the cello that can actually perform that bass, and the viola that does the middle line with harmonies, and then the two violins, of course, do mostly the melodic stuff. But I think in a way it's a very strange thing to write for a quartet, I think, in the 20th and 21st century. But of course, since there were so many good pieces written for quartet in the Romantic and the Classical era, the groups, of course, still were playing those pieces, and they needed new repertoire. That's why they asked composers to come up with new pieces. But that's what it's a very strange layout of instruments to write for, and I've had quite a lot of trouble to find good ideas and something, something that I'm happy with. But the piece actually is it's 10 minutes long, and it's actually divided in 6 pieces, which are very individual. So it is idiosyncratic. They don't really have any point in common between them. But there is a sort of arc form, which I didn't want the pieces to sound completely different. We have examples of pieces written even for quartet that are completely individual and don't really relate to each other. I can think of, for example, I don't know, Webern, the bagatelles, also 6 bagatelles, by the way. My piece is also 6 pieces. Many other pieces also, for example, at the top of my head, there's a Ligeti, the 10 pieces for wind quintet, which are also very individual, but they don't really relate to each other. But I wanted something that didn't relate, but had some sort of connection. So the piece is divided in 2 parts. The first part is 3 pieces, and the second part is 3 more pieces. As I was saying, I mean, the way to write a quartet nowadays, the problem is what to do with the bass, I think, in a way, because the bass doesn't really act as a bass, because you have you cannot in a way build harmony in the same way that was built by by Brahms, by Schumann, by all those composers, even by composers like Shostakovich, who were modern and who did different things, but they were very rooted in the past. And I think, of course, composers in the 20th century found their own ways of developing the quartet. I mean, Ligeti has a special way of writing for quartet. Then Lacherman, of course, another way. Lizapin, another completely different way. And many other composers, of course, I can think of. So for me, I mean, the big trouble really was to find what to do with the viola and the cello, how to combine it with the violins. So in many occasions, I mean, that's what you end up doing in a way. You put the cello and the viola too high up sometimes to cover, to be able to match, to mix with the other, to blend with the other, with the higher strings. But you cannot be doing this all the time, of course. Then it would be just always in the high register, and that's not the point. But so I had to come up with many different ways of and combinations. And another problem with the quartet, of course, is that it's so uniform, the timbres, that to mix them, I mean, to come up with timbral combinations that sound interesting and that sound, that don't sound boring or sound too flat in a way. That's very difficult with a quartet. Nowadays, contemporary composers, we are used to using lots of different instruments with percussion, and you can mix so many things in an orchestra or a small or large ensemble, no? But with a quartet, it's very hard to. I mean, you can do sort of harmonic sounds, but it's been done a lot, so I didn't really want to do this. Anyway, I found quite a few other ways to develop this combination of instruments. Well, the Jubilee Quartet. I mean, I haven't really worked with them before in the past. It's the first time, and we haven't really rehearsed yet. Actually, we're going to rehearse in a couple of 3 days. I've heard recordings of them. I don't think they have played a lot of contemporary music, which is something that I had in my mind when I wrote the piece, because I knew that they would have to rehearse in a very short span of time, in a way, to prepare the performance for the 6th of January, which is very close. So I didn't want to do. So I did really think of how to approach the composition if it was a quartet that are really used to contemporary music, like the Arditi, for whom I wrote in the past, for example. And then you can write hundreds of things, very difficult things, and in 2 rehearsals they have it ready. So I'm not saying they're not good. This quartet is very good, but I think they're not very used to modern music. But I'm really looking forward to working with them. I mean, they have a wonderful sound and tone, and yeah, looking forward to that. The piece, the quartet that I just composed, called Imaginings, was commissioned by the Park Lane Group in London, and the piece is written for a concert on 6th January that will be dedicated and curated by my former teacher at King's College, George Benjamin. And if I'm right, he's chosen all of the pieces in the program. And I'm not sure exactly what music is in there. I know that they're performing his Shadow Lines there, and there is some Ligeti as well, and there is, I think, Schumann, which is a wonderful composer, but maybe not expected in a way that he chose something not contemporary or from the 20th century. Before I received this commission to write a quartet, I was working on sketches for a new orchestral piece, and it's the next project really that I want to develop. I've actually composed my last 2 pieces before the quartet were actually orchestral, and I developed a sort of form, quite compact in a way, that I want to move away from. So I want to develop new areas in orchestral writing, and so I want to really explore. And I've already been exploring quite a lot, really, before the quartet commission, which has been a good break in a way. It's been a good way of moving away a little bit from the orchestral thing. But now I'm going back to it, and I really want to. I have lots of sketches and lots of new ideas.